I'm Ayla.
And I'm Andi.
And welcome to Sinister Dynasty. Right, so this is a wee bit of a trigger warning. So we will be discussing the death of children. But yeah, so by children, the youngest being about 6.
Oh shoot.
The youngest death being 6.
Shoot. So there was quite a few people that died then. Just wait. Oh, okay.
Plot twist.
Okay.
So tonight we're talking about the Aramoana murder. Mass murder. Not just murder, mass murder. So, have you heard of David Malcolm Gray?
I have now.
I'm about to. Okay, so he was born the 20th of November 1956. At the time this took place, he was 33.
Hang on, let me do quick maths. Late 80s or in the 90s. When was
90s.
this? 90s. Oh.
I had to just double check that. Okay.
So recent, but not super recent. Yes.
I mean, like 32 years ago.
Well, it was a while ago.
So he'd be 65 now. He'd be retiring.
He would be retiring.
Ta-ta, mate.
Lucky man. We've still got freaking ages to go. Oh.
No, I'm retiring by the time I turn 50. So he was born in Dunedin to David Gray and Mary Gray. He had 2 siblings.
Wait, interrupting.
Introducting.
This is another Dunedin case. And
Yeah.
his name's also David.
Yeah.
Damn, son.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sort of, Aramoana is slightly out of Dunedin.
Okay.
Righty-ho. So he had 2 siblings, a sister and a brother. His father was worked in a manufacturing company and his mother was a machinist. He was raised in Port Chalmers, where he attended the local primary school from 71 to 73. He then attended the Otago Boys High School. He was an okay student to some degree, but he was described as quiet and unamusing.
Again with the descriptions. Sorry.
I know. And remembered as a loner since primary school.
Okay.
But there was nothing frightening about him then.
Right.
In hindsight.
Yeah. Hindsight's a bitch.
So he was a farmhand here and there, but he was unemployed for a few years before 1990.
He was unemployed. Okay. Well, that puts strain on people, though.
His dad passed in 78 and his mother passed in 85. His sister said, the death of his mother was the reason David moved from Port Chalmers to the family home in Aramoana.
Okay.
His sister Joan said that the death of his mother deeply affected him.
Yeah, that's
Which
fair.
is fair.
That is very fair.
Yeah, so, like, we were talking about this the other day, but, not in all cases, but if it affected him this deeply, I'd say in this situation, your mother's the only person that is going to give you more than the time of day.
Well, especially if his dad had passed previously as well. Then, yeah.
Yeah, so he would have been quite reliant on his mum and his mum on him most probably.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he'd been in Aramoana since he was a young boy.
And then he moved back there after his mum's death. So, no, that's cool.
Yeah, he moved back there permanently.
Yeah.
He kept to himself a lot and spent time reading or searching the beach with his metal detector.
Ooh.
Could have been out getting a job, but whatever.
He's searching for gold.
So, he didn't have a car, but he rode his 10-speed bike to town. Have you seen that Family Guy thing?
No.
With the 10-speed?
No.
I like to ride my 10-speed because it's good exercise. We moved here because I like to ride my 10-speed because it's good exercise.
Just repeating.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. I'm just imagining him on one of those razor skateboard things, like when it's like that you have to move your hips to move.
Like a ripstick.
Yeah,
A ripstick. He was a big fan of Galaxy Books and Records in Lower Stewart Street, Dunedin. I love a good bookstore. Does that make me
Very grounding.
go? So he was frequented there quite regularly.
Okay.
Bill Brosnan, the owner, said that he'd known David for about 5 years. He described him as a fan of military books and soldier of Fortune magazine. And so he loved a good warfare, weaponry and survivalist literature. Can't say the same for myself. He had enemies in town, but doesn't everyone?
Yeah.
His neighbours Tui and Bert Gibbs called them football thugs. If you didn't fit in, they made your life hell.
That sucks. Though.
So unnecessary.
Welcome to school.
So he was an animal lover, and locals recorded this as a source of conflict between him and his neighbour Garry Holden, whose pets kept dying randomly.
Wait, what? So he said he was an animal lover.
Yeah, David was an animal lover,
and yet the neighbours' animals kept dying a lot.
Yeah, but not due to David.
Oh, okay.
Because he was an animal lover.
Yeah, well, that's
not
what
an
I was
animal
thinking.
killer.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, that doesn't make sense.
It's just a human killer. In January, he threatened an assistant of the bookshop with what appeared to be a shotgun and a cardboard box, and he was served with a trespass notice in February. David was known to the police as a recluse and eccentric, but was not thought to be a major concern.
Mm-hmm.
November 13th, 1990. David visited his local bank where he found that he had been charged $2 for a bank fee.
Wow.
He angrily disputed this.
Okay.
I
suppose, in his defence though, $2 back then could have been like
a massive amount.
$10, I don't know.
Yeah, fair.
Oh my god, have you seen that thing where it's like, like on Arrested Development, how much does a banana cost? Oh, like $10.
Not wrong.
I mean,
how much is a lettuce?
That's very wrong.
$5.
No, bananas do not cost $10.
They're heading that way.
Yeah, that is fair.
So he popped into Elio's gun shop on his way home in King Edward Street, Dunedin. And he put a $100 deposit on a gun and was going to collect it the following week. He headed to the Continental Coffee Bar, where he was served a cold pie and became confrontational.
If you got a cold pie.
Fair. I'd be telling as well. When he was asked to leave, he said, "I'll be back. I'm going to get you. I'll blow you away."
Well, normally you're blowing on the pie, so we had to get those blows out somehow.
7:30 p.m. David confronted his neighbour Garry Holden, who we will call Holden. So one of Holden's dogs wandered onto David's property. After the dispute, David returned to his home to receive his semi-automatic rifle.
Oh, so that was the one that he ordered?
No, because he hadn't picked that up yet. So this was later
so he
in the
had
day.
another one at home.
So this was the same day.
Oh, okay.
Yes, he had another one at home.
Nice.
And a lot more. He shot Holden multiple times in the chest before walking over to him and shooting him fatally in the head.
Holy. Wait, so they're having an argument over a dog?
Yep.
And then he just goes into his house and gets a gun and just shoots him multiple times?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so trigger warning, if you want to skip ahead or you want to skip this entire video, that's cool.
We won't
see you
blame
next
you.
episode.
Yeah.
So walking out of the Holden home with 3 young girls, Holden's 2 daughters, Chiquita and Jasmine, and his partner's adopted daughter, Rewa, who said to Chiquita In a tone with no emotion, Garry's getting shot. The girls ran into the Holden home to hide. David walked into the Holden's property and into the home. He found Chiquita quickly hiding with the girls under the table and shot her in the arm, which lodged in her abdomen with a .22 caliber semi-automatic sporting rifle. David then found Jasmine and Rewa, shooting and killing them both. Chiquita managed to escape by running out the back door. She ran past her father's dead body to Julia Bryson's nearby home, who called 111. While David set the Holden's home on fire. Once realising that Jasmine and Rewa were in the home still, Julia wrapped Chiquita in a towel and drove the van to the home in an attempt to try and save the girls. David, who was still standing outside of the Holden home, shot at Julia's van as it drove past, but by this time the home was ablaze.
Wow.
Some of the locals saw that the home was ablaze and drove utility vehicles, so utes like mine, to the home in an effort to help. David, who was wearing a rolled up balaclava over his head and a rifle in his hand, shot at all of the vehicles. How terrifying.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Vanessa Percy was shot several times in the back as she fled screaming in terror. She died a few hours later on the scene. David shot at 3 more children. He killed 2 boys, Leo Wilson and Dion Percy, while shooting and critically injuring Stacey Percy, who was only 4 years old.
Wow.
So she was injured with a bullet to the abdomen. All of the children were in the back of their father, Ross Percy's ute, who had been driving them home after a day of fishing when he saw the fire. He was shot in the head and killed. Ali Kitali was shot and killed. David then entered the home of Tim Jemison, killing him, and another elderly local, Vic Crimp, a Green Island former mayor. The next to be shot was James Dixon, who was looking for his dog Patch. James's mother, Eva Dixon, and neighbour, Chris Cole, went to the road to find out what was happening. David shot at them both, wounding Cole, who was in the phone booth trying to call the police. Miss Dixon was forced to dive for cover. She had recently had a hip replacement and couldn't walk unaided. She pulled herself along on her stomach using her arms and feet into a ditch about 100 metres away, where she was able to call 111. She then crawled back to Cole to let him know that help was on the way and waited with him for a while, then crawled back into her own home to call 111 again, as she was concerned about the length of time it was taking emergency services to respond. By this time it was dark. The dispatcher told Miss Dixon to stay inside. Help arrived too late for Cole, who passed away later in the hospital. Right.
That's too dark to even make jokes about, like that's some serious shit.
I know. All I can do is stutter.
Yeah. Like, fair enough. That's huge. That's so awful. That's so horrible.
It's not even all of them.
Jeez.
The first armed police officer to arrive was Sergeant Stuart Guthrie, who was an officer in charge of the Chalmers police station and a non-commercial officer in the Armed Offenders Squad. He came armed with a Smith & Wesson Model 10 police revolver. So, if you're not from New Zealand, which I can't imagine you are, not from here, our frontline police in New Zealand do not routinely carry firearms. So Guthrie enlisted the help from Constable Russell Anderson, the local fire chief who arrived with fire services, and an ambulance who arrived with the fire services and an ambulance shortly after. The fire engines were on alert but had to remain a distance back until David was restrained. Guthrie armed Anderson with a rifle from a local resident Guthrie and Anderson made their way to town towards David's home, where Guthrie directed Anderson to cover the front while he moved to cover the rear of the house, which was more dangerous of the two positions. Detective Paul Allen Knox and 2 other constables arrived, starting the first steps of the cordon contain appeal, standard police strategies for armed offenders. Guthrie watched David and relayed his movements inside of the home to police. Guthrie watched David and relayed his movements inside the home to the police communication centre. After some time, he lost sight of David and warned the detective to have everyone on high alert. Anderson spotted David coming out of the darkness and issued a challenge, at which David retreated quickly through the back of his property. Taking cover in the sand dunes of a neighbouring batch, Guthrie encountered David coming out of the darkness. Yelling at David to surrender, Guthrie fired a warning shot. David shouted, "Don't shoot," making Guthrie believe that David was going to surrender. He, however, shot at Guthrie several times. One shot striking Guthrie in the head, killing him instantly.
Wow.
Minutes later, the Dunedin branch of the ALS, so Armed Offenders Squad, began to arrive and seal off the township with a roadblock about 250 metres along the only road in or out of the town. Securing it with armoured cars, the ALS units from Christchurch, Timaru and Invercargill were called in for support. As David's rifle had a scope, this increases accuracy at long-range shooting. The police at this point had ordered that David be shot on sight with no warning shot. Fair. Completely fair.
Yeah.
Commissioner of Police John Jameson had authorised the anti-terror squad, now known as the Special Tactics Group, to travel to Dunedin to locate David. Group members were in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch. Unable to get transport with the Air Force. This is quite amusing to me, but the group caught an early morning business flight on the 14th of November 1990. They carried Heckler and Koch MP5 submachine guns, encountering some problems taking firearms on a commercial aircraft. Also on the flight were Minister of Police John Banks, the Commissioner, and Julie Holden Bryson. So Julie was
The wife of
Gary's partner.
Yeah. With the dog that he first shot.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Who described... Julie described Aramoana to the ATS. A large number of reporters met them on the flight. Met the flight on arrival at Dunedin. They took a bus to Port Chalmers, which was choked with vehicles. So this could have gone quicker. But residents briefed the ATS about Aramoana and David. ATS members took a flight to scout the township in the Royal New Zealand Air Force helicopter. The helicopter had to fly high as it had no armour for small arms fire, and David had shot at a private news helicopter that morning. The crew of the Air Force proceeded to fly low and slow over the areas of bush where David thought to be hiding. The helicopter was carrying armed police and was dropping tear gas grenades in an attempt to flush them out. The crew flew over 8 hours in support of the operation during the day, including positioning police snipers around the hill. After the initial scout flight, the ATS moved out in 2 squads and met up with the Timaru ALS, who were holding their position. The groups received the orders: if he has a firearm, he is to be shot. At this time, David had entered a batch, eaten a small meal, and gone to sleep. November 14th.
Sorry, I'm just interrupting. He'd broken into the batch, eaten a small meal,
into a
batch, and just gone to sleep.
Yeah.
He's just gone to sleep. Nothing big happened that day. All good.
No,
I'm just
mine
going to
a
sleep
day.
now. Yeah, okay. Cool. Cool.
No problem, bro. Just take a nap.
Yeah.
November 14th at 6 a.m. Some members of the Christchurch ATS moved into Aramoana. They first went to David's house, passing the bodies shot the day before in the streets.
Oh, so they were still there.
Yeah.
Wow.
After clearing neighbouring houses, they put a stun grenade into David's house, blowing out the windows, followed by tear gas. Entering the home, they found that David was not there, because he was asleep
In a batch.
in a batch. The group worked down the road, checking each house. A squad was on either side of the street. Then they found Stacey Percy, who was shot in the abdomen. Before they found her, they heard her call out.
Oh, so that was the 4-year-old, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, wow. So she was there overnight.
Yep. And she called out,
Yeah.
"Don't shoot me again, please."
Mm.
The ATS, called the AOC, with members in Wanganui, Palmerston North and Napier for backup. The group discovered Sergeant Guthrie's revolver in a garden and a woman who had been hiding under a table for more than 20 hours.
Wow.
After searching house to house, the ATS found a batch with a broken window on the northeastern side of the township. The batch had large hedges on both sides and an asbestos shed at the rear. David was spotted briefly at a window. Police put a stun grenade through the window, but it bounced off a nearby mattress that David had placed as a barricade and landed back near the police. The police fired tear gas into the batch, but David began shooting, not at police, but at the shed. The ATS opened fire on both sides for 2 minutes while David walked around inside, firing randomly. A stray bullet that passed through the batch struck an officer in the ankle. As soon as the shooting started, the Air Force took position overhead of the batch to ensure David could not escape into the bush with the approaching darkness. 5:50 p.m. David ran out of the batch, shooting from the hip and shouting, "Kill me, fucking kill me, you bastards." He took a few steps before being shot and knocked down from the gunfire. David was hit 5 times. This is brutal, so bear with. In the eye, neck, chest, and twice in the groin. Even with these injuries, he fought fiercely against police, breaking free of plastic handcuffs before being re-handcuffed, while berating police for not killing him. Ambulance officers arrived and treated him at the scene, and on the way to the hospital, but he didn't make it very far before he passed away at 6:30 as a result of the wounds. I hope he suffered. Inside the batch, the police found a .22 Winchester model 750 rifle fitted with a suppressor, a SKS semi-automatic rifle, a .22 Squires and Bingham Model 16, and an air rifle with hundreds of .22 ammo and approximately 100 rounds of .223 ammo. David was shot carrying a .22 Remington nylon rifle as well as the .223 Norinco 84 when he was shot. Rewa Bison and Jasmine Holden's charred bodies were found in what remained of the family Holden home. 14 people, including David, were left killed and 3 critically injured by the end of the incident. In 2010, when they reviewed the gun laws, they said, according to one expert, as recorded in the minister's speech introducing the bill to amend the Arms Act, Mr. Gray went on a commando fantasy where he killed his victims. David had a firearms licence, but did not have the endorsement for a pistol or restricted weapon. The police were not aware that David had 4 semi-automatics and had ordered another one, nor was there anything in the legislation to restrict David from owning a semi-automatic once he had a firearms licence, nor the number he could own. 3 days after the incident, his house at 27 Murray Street was set on fire and burnt to the ground. The Port Chalmers Fire Brigade attended and doused the surrounding vegetation and water to prevent the fire spreading. Around 50 residents watched the home burn. David's relatives asked that any investigation of arson be stopped when contacted by police. While they were preparing to make the film out of the blue, the director said, "I was scarily aware of Bad Blood. It was a brilliant New Zealand film. It was a terrible experience watching it." So Bad Blood is about Stanley Graham, who our first case was based on. If you haven't heard that one, flick back and give it a listen, because we referenced David Gray in that one also. There are overt similarities and fundamental differences between David and Stan's stories. Both of the men felt paranoid and victimised. Both had been appreciated in their communities for their man-alone-can-do qualities. He's a resourceful bugger, some said about Stanley Graham. Both end with the killer's home being burnt to the ground in an attempt of an exorcism. So this is the outcomes, and not the outcomes. So this is the background on the people who have passed. I haven't been able to find a lot on all of them, but this is to give you an idea of the lives that were lost, because we don't want this to be about David Gray. We want to, definitely remember those who have been lost. So there's a wee bit about the cop and not so much about everyone else, but just bear with. So these people passed away in the shooting. So Sergeant Stuart Graham, called Stu. Sergeant Stuart Graham Guthrie, Stu, 41, born the 22nd of the 12th, 48. He grew up in Debreville, to lovely parents and an older brother, John. He attended Port Chalmers Primary, then Otago Boys High School. He left school at 16 to join the New Zealand Royal Navy. During this time, he served on 4 different ships, where he had become a lead seaman and a radar specialist. In 67, he married his wife, Sandra, and had 3 children. In 74, he left the Navy. A month later, he joined the New Zealand Police at age 26. At that time, he graduated in May 65. So they returned to Dunedin, and within 10 years of that, he became a sergeant. Eventually, he became the officer in charge of Port Chalmers Police Station. In 78, he was selected into the Police Armed Defenders Squad. He provided after-school entertainment for the local children with a Nintendo set-up upstairs at the police station. The Guthrie family owned a batch in Aramoana since the late 60s, where many happy holidays were spent there, first with his parents, then with his own family. He was a keen sportsman and played rugby all his life, as a schoolboy and for the Port Chalmers Rugby Club, then the New Zealand Police. There is an annual rugby match now between the police and Port Chalmers. At stake is Guthrie's wooden baton, which had been made into a trophy.
That's cool.
Legend has it, after completing a half marathon, Stu ran alongside team members who were completing the full marathon to show support, with a scar in his mouth and a can of beer in his hand. Thousands turned out to celebrate his life at his funeral. He received the George Cross, which is awarded for acts of the greatest heroism or the most conspicuous courage in circumstances of extreme danger. So it's equivalent to the military's Victoria Cross. Only 3 George Crosses were awarded in the 20th century, and Stuart's was one of them. His George Cross remains unique, as it's the only one awarded to police. So the cross is in Lord Ashcroft's collection on display at the Imperial War Museum in London. There was a wee bit of controversy around it leaving New Zealand.
Yeah.
You can read about that, but I'm not doing that. So Rewa Bryson, who was 11, Julia Bryson's adopted daughter. Yes, so she was 11 years old when she passed. Simon Christopher Coles, Chris, 62 when he passed. Victor James Crimp, 72. Husband of Dorothy Wilde, former mayor of Green Island. He was awarded with the Queen's Gallantry Medal, awarded for exemplary acts of bravery. And James Alexander Dixon, 45, son of Neil and Eva Dixon, beloved owner of Patch the dog. Garry Holden, who was 38, father to Jasmine, Chiquita, and his partner Julie's daughter, Rewa. Jasmine Holden, who was 11, she was buried alongside her father. Magnus Jameson, who I referred to as Tim, was 69 when he passed. Ross James Percy, 42. Vanessa Grace Percy, 26. So he is the wife of Ross Percy and mother to Dion and Stacey. Dion Percy was 6. Aliki Tali was 41 and Leo Wilson was also 6. Wounded. Stacey Percy, who was 4, daughter to Ross and Vanessa. Chiquita Holden, who was 9. She was the daughter of Garry Holden. She is currently a victim support officer for Maritime New Zealand, previously a homicide service specialist with victim support. She's just out here doing it. She was awarded the Queen's Commemoration for Brave Conduct for Gallantry, entailing risk to life and meriting national recognition. Detective Stephen Vaughan, 26. These 3 people did not pass away. They're still alright. So, in 2018, 27 years later, Chiquita Holden and Detective Stephen Vaughan married in a low-key wedding. Both were wounded in the accident but survived. They had their first meeting in Dunedin Hospital while recovering from their injuries, where they compared scars and signed each other's casts. And then, yeah. He was 28 when they met in hospital.
Oh, really? And she was 9. Oh. But no, love is love. Love is love.
Not a hater. Just a lover. So, someone who survived with no injury was Eva Dixon, the mother of James. She later received the Gregory Medal, which is to recognise acts of great bravery. The medal is now kept at the Porirua Police Museum. She sadly passed away in 2007.
Why is it kept in Porirua? That's up north. Why not?
Because it's the police museum.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be,
Yeah, that makes sense.
a memorial sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, the aftermath of this. In 1992, New Zealand gun laws tightened. The law required stricter licensing and registration for semi-automatic weapons. A memorial to the victims was erected in the township. A memorial to Sergeant Stuart Guthrie was erected at the Dunedin police station. His name also added to the memorial wall at the Royal New Zealand Police College. 15 years after the event, Chiquita organised a memorial service for anyone affected by the event, and for the future hopes to be able to help other victims of tragedy. The day consisted of a picnic at the Aramoana Domain, a jazz band playing in the background, and speeches from some invited guests. It signifies a day to reflect, celebrate, and reminisce. Chiquita says she has no anger towards David, and if he had lived, she would have had some questions. She has said, "I would have asked him why, what drove him to do that, and what could have been done. What could have we done to help him? He had family and friends who would have been just as hurt by this and are just as much victims as the family of the people who died. But society doesn't think like that. It's like they haven't got the right to grieve. Everyone has had something bad happen. but there's no point dwelling or being angry. Sure, I've had my moments, but if you can't move on, you just end up a bitter old lady. So Chiquita says, it will be hard, of course, but I want to focus on the positive. Time might heal, but it certainly doesn't take away the memories. Yeah, so that was the case of David Gray and the unnecessary killing of 13 people.
Yeah. That's pretty, that's just, again, too dark. Well, all the topics we cover are quite dark, but that in particular, that's horrible.
Children's deaths hit different.
And just the fact that there were so many of them.
Yeah. One thing that always gets me, I remember seeing this one thing on Facebook once, and it was like, what happens if the cure to cancer is hidden in the mind of a child who can't afford an education? But what happens if, I don't know, the cure to save the world is in the mind of a child who has been unnecessarily killed?
Yeah.
How awful. But yeah, so we're going to wrap up there because we're both sad now.
That's really depressing.
And I'm going to go home and sulk.
That's awful. That's horrific.
So, I am Ayla.
And I'm Andi.
And this was Sinister Dynasty. Thank you for listening.